Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. This year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen, plus a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday.
In an Alabama Supreme Court decision that has rattled reproductive medicine across the country, a majority of the justices said the law was clear that frozen embryos should be considered children. Yes, unborn children are children, according to these justices. The Chief Justice Tom Parker drew on more than Constitution and legal precedent to explain his determination. He cited passages from the Bible, including the book of Genesis and the prophet Jeremiah. Also, he quoted 16th and 17th century theologians to support his position. And lots of folks are thinking that the Democrats are in disarray, but new reports out that the state Republican parties in roughly half of most of the important battleground states are awash in various degrees of dysfunction, debt, and disarray. In Arizona, the chairman of the party recently resigned because of a leaked tape that suggested that he bribed a candidate to stay out of a Senate race. In Georgia, the party's treasury has shrunk by more than 75% as it has had to spend over $1 million on legal fees defending fake electors. And in Nevada, the party chairman himself is under indictment for his role as a fake elector in the 2020 election. And that Texas judge that ruled today that a school district's dress code, which it used to suspend a Black student last year for refusing to change the way he wears his hair, well, that judge is under fire. Activists from around the country, as well as Texas state legislators, are saying that the judge got it wrong, that the 18-year-old student, Daryl George, who has been wearing dreadlocks for several years at this particular high school, just adjacent to Houston, should have been allowed to return to school with his hairstyle. Lawyers for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and others are vowing to appeal the judge's decision and to continue to fight on behalf of Daryl George. I'll talk more about that case later in this hour. And after 4 years of test optional undergraduate admissions, schools, prestigious schools like Yale University, have announced a new, not test optional, but test flexible, they call it, approach. So under this test flexible approach, scores are required, but applicants can choose the SAT, the ACT, or a subject-based advanced placement exam. Yale was one of the many colleges that suspended their test requirements in response to the constraints of the COVID pandemic. MIT, Dartmouth, and others have started to reinstate their testing requirements as well. And an attorney for Donald Trump has asked the New York judge that rendered a verdict against Trump in his civil fraud case. The lawyers are asking for a 30-day delay in enforcing the ruling that was handed down in a New York court on Friday. Now, this judgment fined the former president and his company more than $350 million and temporarily barred Trump and his sons from doing business in the state. Now, in response to this request, an attorney for the New York Attorney General's office said in a letter to the judge that the defendants don't provide any basis for staying enforcement of the judgment. They also remind the court that Trump and team have already requested a stay in their post-trial brief, which the court declined to grant. And Letitia James has said if Trump doesn't pay up, she is prepared to seize his assets. And American law enforcement officials have spent years looking into allegations that allies of Mexico's president, Andres Obrador, met with and took millions of dollars from drug cartels after he took office. U.S. records and 3 people familiar with the matter say that this reporting can be substantiated and that they can provide links between powerful cartel operatives and Mexican advisors, as well as between those cartels and the president. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we go a little deeper, where we dig behind some of those headlines. And today, Dr. Corte is with me again. He was with us in hour 1. And we're going to talk in this hour about both the ruling out of Texas regarding that 18-year-old student and the dreadlocks, but we're also going to talk about voting. Yesterday, we devoted an entire hour to how Black male voters are thinking about this election, whether they're going to defect from the Democratic Party and in large numbers start voting for Donald Trump, and what is going to really motivate those voters who may not vote for Trump, but may be thinking about staying home. We're going to be continuing analyzing the issue of voting and what's going to motivate voters, particularly Black voters, to get out to the polls this year. Next week, we're going to be really focused on female voters, Black women, who have been such a reliable base for the Democratic Party. What are Black women thinking about this election, and what do they want to see more of and less of? And what about all these rumors that we're going to have what folks are calling a contested convention? So, contested convention, whereby the person that goes into the convention, i.e. in this case, it's going to be Joe Biden, who has all of the delegates because they've been campaigning and they've been winning primaries all over the country, that somehow Joe Biden is going to be persuaded to release his delegates, i.e. give them the freedom to vote for anyone, including folks who have not been on the campaign trail. And we keep hearing the name of the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, that somehow at the Democratic convention that's happening in Chicago on August 19th, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to release their delegates, and that then those delegates are going to vote for Gavin Newsom. And those of us that study politics and know politics and go to these conventions know that conspiracy theory has so many holes and so many problems, because even if this unthinkable thing happens, and it is so far-fetched and so unthinkable, but let's just kind of walk through the other problems with it. So Joe Biden, Kamala Harris comes in, they come in, they say, we've been campaigning all year, we've been working our butts off, running the country and campaigning, but we don't mind. If the party wants the guy over here, Gavin Newsom, will release our delegates. So everybody that's a delegate decides they're going to vote for Gavin Newsom. Now, this, again, lots of assumptions that will never happen. Gavin Newsom still has a big problem. Gavin Newsom has no money. He has no money because he hasn't been running for president. He hasn't been raising any money. Now, he may have money sitting in an account that he's raised to be the governor of the state of California, but because of campaign finance laws and rules, he can't just transfer that money from his gubernatorial account and put it in a presidential account and start spending money that folks like us in California gave him to run for governor and say, I'm just going to use this money to run for president. So here you have Gavin Newsom ready to leave the convention in August and go out and start his general election campaign against presumably Donald Trump, but he's broke, has no money. So again, following this conspiracy theory through to the end, he would have to, he being Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, would have to agree to transfer the $1 billion plus that they probably are going to raise in this election to the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, because that's the only thing legally they can do with it. And then the DNC would have to use that money, to fund Gavin Newsom's imaginary campaign for president. So many flaws, so many reasons that's not going to happen when Dr. Nee Quarterley comes forward to talk about the election and voting. We're going to talk about when the last time there was a contested convention in this country and what happened to the Democrats as a result of that contested convention. Really interesting stuff if you follow politics, and all these conspiracy theories have a lot of people nervous. But again, those of us who study this for a living know that these are, in fact, just big, wild urban tales, urban myths. But at least they're fun to talk about. So when we come forward, Dr. Nee Quarterley Corte is back, and also Dr. John Calvin Smiley is going to join me, and we're going to definitely talk about that disturbing case involving the Crown Act. Stay with me, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things: increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice. Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough.
Do you support public education? More than 38,000 educators at United Teachers Los Angeles do too. Together, we have fought for a better public education for our students and communities, and having you on our side has been essential in our fight for better public schools. Together, we will continue to work for public schools with green spaces, more mental health staff, smaller class sizes at every grade level, and a higher investment in the Black Student Achievement Plan. We are UTLA, and you make us stronger.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Your floors can go from clean to dirty fast. From juice spills, to muddy paw prints, to little sticky finger marks. Good thing your Swiffer WetJet works fast too. Swiffer WetJet easily cleans everyday messes as quick as they happen. The next mess is right around the corner. So grab your Swiffer WetJet and just spray, push, all clean.
We are back, and Dr. Nee Quarterley Corte, KBLA National Political Affairs Analyst and host of A More Perfect Union, right here on KBLA weekdays at 1 p.m. PST is joining me again. Thank you, Dr. Nee, for hanging out with Areva Martin in real time today on a Thursday, busy night for you. But I couldn't think of a better person to have on talking about contested conventions. You've heard these wild, wild conspiracy theories. So take us back to the Democratic Convention of 1968 and set the scene for us what was happening there and how it might have some relevance, if at all, to what folks are predicting may happen in Chicago this year.
Well, let me just say that I think this theory really dates back to Ezra Klein's podcast. I think a lot of folks, certainly within the DC Beltway, have been tuned into the Ezra Klein podcast, where he shared this theory that seems to be catching on. I'm in a number of group chats, and people have been chatting about it. I think it's a bit far-fetched. There's a lot of if-then in order to make this thing work. And let me just say that I think one of the things that is a little jarring to the base of the Democratic Party, Black women, why are we skipping over Vice President Kamala Harris? I mean, after all, isn't that part of the job? Part of being vice president is being able to stand in to be a caretaker president in the event that the president, for whatever reason, cannot execute the responsibilities of that office. And so this whole conversation about whether it's Gavin Newsom or Governor Pritzker of Illinois or Governor Whitmer of Michigan or fill in the blank, Democrats are talking about everybody else, but the Democrats that we elected in 2020 by the largest margin ever. There's no Democratic president that's ever received more votes than Biden-Harris. And so it's a little strange that Harris isn't even a part of the equation. She isn't even a part of the conversation. I don't think that dog is going to hunt at the end of the day with the base of the base of the party. Harris has got to have a fair chance at being able to make the case, and that's only in the event that President Biden decides to step aside. And right now, there is no indication that he plans to do that.
No indication whatsoever. Dr. Calvin John Smiley is still with us as well. I know you weren't born probably in 1968, neither was I. I don't think any of us were. but you're a history teacher, you're a professor, so you know all of this stuff. I'm just fascinated by history. So there was the Vietnam War, and people were angry. There were lots of protesters, and now it's the Palestinian Gaza crisis, and we expect to have a lot of protesters at the convention this year. But what made that? I still want people to know what happened for those folks, and I agree with you, Dr. Nee. It's far-fetched. It's ridiculous that we're not talking about our vice president, but folks are talking about this, and because people are talking about it, we've got to talk about it. But tell us, if you recall, Dr. Smiley, what happened to the Democrats coming out of that contested convention?
Yeah, I mean, you think about the Chicago 7, which later became the Chicago 8. We had the various leaders of different political groups. So everyone from SDS, as well as Bobby Seale of the Black Panther Party, who were charged with various forms of conspiracy and inciting a riot. And I think, one of the biggest takeaways that I remember and how I kind of think about this is that you had the judge in Chicago who had Bobby Seale gag ordered in the court and chained to his chair, and kind of reminiscent of what would happen to a Black man during slavery who got uppity and out of his capacities. And so I think, but as you said, Areva, right, we had the height of the Vietnam War. Dr. King had been killed. The kind of long struggle of the civil rights movement had been kind of waning, in the sense that people were like, we're doing this peaceful thing, we're doing this nonviolent thing, it's not working. And in fact, all we continue to see is violence bestowed upon us. And for a lot of the civil rights movement and of that era, it was able to be kind of, the burden was put on to white supremacy and Southern racists, Well, here it is in Chicago, a northern city where racism doesn't happen in the same way, yet you have the Chicago police beating protesters, not armed citizens, but, taking bats and clubs and hitting people over the head. So, yeah, I mean, we hope that history doesn't repeat itself, but certainly with all that is going on in the world between what Israel is doing to Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, I think oftentimes we forget about that the West Bank also is seeing its own sets of violence. What's happening in Ukraine and Russia, what's happening to Americans in terms of rent and costs of living, and not really feeling that reprieve. Yeah, this could set up for a very tumultuous election season. And then we got to bring Trump back into it. We have a guy who his whole campaign strategy is tails you lose, heads I win. So what happens, when and I'll put it out there, when he does lose, what happens then, right? What is our next step? So yeah, there's a lot that is yet to be seen, and hopefully, the DNC's got a strategy. And I agree with Dr. Nee. Kamala is the VP. Why are they not putting her?
So
at
this
least
was
in that?
this was a trick question for both of you professors, and you failed.
Oh no.
It was a quiz. The answer was the Democrats lost the general election. So the lesson from this is Democrats don't go to Chicago again acting a fool, because you are going to lose the election. We got Richard Nixon in 1968, professors.
Well, can I say one thing to that, is that Lyndon Johnson, the incumbent, stepped down and decided not to run. And that kind of shook up the party. So it will be interesting to see what Joe Biden does. If Joe Biden steps down and we have a new candidate, certainly.
Professor Smiley, Joe Biden cannot step down. He's a student of history. He's had my quiz. Stepping down doesn't work. You can't step down. If you're stepping down, let's just give the keys to the White House to Donald Trump.
Right.
You cannot run a campaign from August to November. It's impossible. So I don't even know what Ezra Klein, Dr. Nee, is a smart guy. Why is he peddling this conspiracy theory? Who can win an election? You got the financial issues. You've got the party division. Black women, we would lose our minds. We would go berserk if Kamala Harris, and we would even want Kamala to run under these conditions because she hasn't had enough time to run for president. So why are smart folks like Ezra Klein peddling this conspiracy, Dr. Nee?
Well, I think a lot of people inside the Beltway are not yet convinced that this president at 81 years old, can run the kind of vigorous campaign against Donald Trump and win. There are a number of folks inside the Beltway that are suggesting that what if the president misses a step on Air Force One? What if there's an issue, he slips in the bathtub, right? A lot of folks see him as a fragile 81 years old, and simply believe there should be a contingency plan that we take seriously. I and so many others are of the belief that the framers of the Constitution thought about that, and that's why we have a vice president. That's why there is a line of succession. This president has, often said, you don't have to take my word for it, watch me. And if you look at the legislative record of Joe Biden, if you look at all the times where people counted him out and said, Joe's not going to be able to get anything done, he certainly hasn't accomplished everything that we sent them there to do, but they have an enviable record to run on. And this president, for all intents and purposes, intends to do that. And so, maybe Democrats will get out of their own way and stop peddling in these conspiracy theories and start promoting real people's stories, people whose lives have been made materially different because of the work of this White House, the work of Senate Democrats, the coalition of the willing, and get about the business of campaigning, making the case.
Slipping and falling and injuring yourself is very different from going into a convention where you've been campaigning for 3 years and saying, I'm going to relinquish my delegates. And all of these people who think Biden's not ready, that ship has sailed, people. Literally, folks who said Biden should have stepped aside, you all know this. If Biden had announced 2 years ago, 3 years ago that he was not running, he would have instantly been lame duck. He wouldn't have been able to get anything done. But that's technically what he would have had to do to allow Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, all these other people the runway to become a household name and raise the $1 billion+ that you need to run for president. It's an immature and silly notion. And it burns me up that these very sophisticated Democrats are peddling this. They know you cannot become the president. So unless you just want Donald Trump to get the keys and just start the job, we got to stay the course with the team that we have. It's too late to talk about changing the team. That's not how American politics works. And anyone who's peddling that conspiracy theory, it's up to us to correct them. That's not going to happen. Joe, and then let's just get real. Joe Biden has his own ego. Why would that man work for a year, have the poll numbers, the great poll yesterday, deliver student loan debt, deliver infrastructure, deliver on so many things, and then just walk up and hand it to another guy? That ain't even how, I'm not a man, but I know that's not how y'all get down. That ain't happening.
He's waited his whole life. He's waited his whole career, to be president. He ain't.
I'm a Black woman, and I know Kamala ain't giving that money over to somebody that she's been out here hustling and working her butt off. She's not handing her money to Gavin Newsom to run a campaign. Gavin, get in line like the rest of the folks. Run in 2028. Do whatever you're going to do. But 2024 is Biden and Harris. I'm sorry, people. All right, when we come forward, we are going to talk about this Crown Act. I'm going to stop getting so excited about these elections. Stay with us. We're talking about this very important case. KBLA Talk 1580.
The right time. More of Areva Market when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. An iconic leader in the Knoxville, Tennessee community has passed away. Bob Booker has died at the age of 88. Booker, who was Black, spearheaded the desegregation of downtown Knoxville and was in the forefront of the civil rights movement in the city. He was motivated to act against discrimination after serving in Europe in the Army. There, he once said, he lived truly free for the 3 years he served in France and England. President Biden says today's Republicans are worse than the racists that used to be in Congress. Biden spoke at a fundraising event in San Francisco and said he served with real racists during his long career in Washington. Quote, guys that have set terrible records on race, end quote, but added, at least you could work with some of these guys. Biden then spoke about the current Republicans in Congress and said, quote, these guys are worse because they do not believe in basic democratic principles, end quote. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Back in East LA, CHP remains on the scene due to a stall blocking the center divide of the 710 South at Whittier Olympic Boulevard split. Stop traffic continues from Floral Drive over 20 minutes. In the City of Industry on the 60 East at Azusa Avenue, watch for an accident currently on the right shoulder, and heavy traffic flow continues from Peck Road up to 10 to 15 minutes. In Mission Hills, watch for overall heavy traffic coming from the 90. As an accident is currently blocking the right lane of the 405 North before Highway 118. Right now, heavy traffic is forming from the 101.
Dive into hibernation mode with a huge deal on deeper sleep during Mattress Firm's President's Day sale. Shop now and save up to $500 on select Tempur-Pedic adjustable mattress sets and receive a $300 instant gift for pillows and more. Plus, get free and fast delivery to your door. Restrictions apply.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
USC freshman Juju Watkins was named Pac-12 Conference Player of the Week for the third time this season. The Compton native is averaging 32.3 points during USC's 6-game winning streak. Today's Black History Month sports moment. On October 3rd, 1989, Art Shell became the NFL's first Black head coach in the modern era. Shell was hired to take over the Los Angeles Raiders. The starting point for the NFL's modern era was 1970, when the NFL agreed to merge with the rival AFL. By the time Shell made history, the NBA already had 18 Black head coaches, and Major League Baseball had 4 Black managers. Shell coached the Raiders for 6 years and led them to 3 playoffs. Since Shell made history, The NFL has had 24 black head coaches, 2 of them won Super Bowls. Tony Dungy with Indianapolis and Mike Tomlin with Pittsburgh. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. At this year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen, plus a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
It's time to represent your community in the 2024 presidential primary election. When you vote, you get to decide what is best for you, your neighborhood, and your family. Use your power. Make a plan to vote today. Visit plan.lavote.gov. That's plan.lavote.gov to get everything you need to vote in the March 5th presidential primary election. Brought to you by the Los Angeles County Registrar.
Linking social justice and climate justice all year long. KBLA Talk 1580.
I have a secret. I use Secret Whole Body Deodorant because more than just my armpits stink.
Oh, can I use it where my bra rubs under my...
Oh, yeah.
And what about down there? You know, my...
Totally. 4 out of 5 gynecologists would recommend it. So I tried it, and now I get 72 hours of freshness from my pits to my...
Ooh, I love that it's a spray.
Me too. And it comes in sticks and creams too. Go get your Secret Whole Body Deodorant.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. Let's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and Dr. Calvin John Smiley is still with me. He's doing double duty today, and I so appreciate him for hanging out with me today and helping us make sense of all of this, really, some of this disturbing and troubling news. This case with this 18-year-old student in Georgia, a trial judge basically determined that it was not a violation of the Texas Crown Act for the school to require 18-year-old Mr. George to wear his hair at what they called a length that is consistent with their school policies. We are learning now that after the decision was rendered, the representatives of the state of Texas who were involved in enacting the Crown Act were aghast and just shocked at the ruling, and that Mr. George said, all because of my hair, I can't get my education because of my hair. I can't be around my peers and enjoy my junior year because of my hair. Apparently, he was brought to tears, and I imagine his mother was equally emotional. Professor Smiley, what do you make of this decision by the school board that, well, not by the school board, by this judge, that the school policy around hair is not a violation of the Crown Act and therefore is not discriminatory?
It's racist, plain and simple, when we think about, that this school, first of all, made a mountain out of a molehill, right? I mean, there's so many ways in which that they probably could have negotiated with this young man, even though I don't agree with any sort of policing a young man's hair, but wear it up, all these kind of modifications that don't uh, make him cut his hair. And in all the pictures I've seen, his hair is also very well kept, right? It looks pristine. And so we're not talking about simply hair, but we're talking about a history of the policing of the Black body and what is seen as wrong or what has been perceived as criminal or dirty or ugly. And I think that's what goes to the deeper meaning of this and why so many people, as you said, are aghast and shocked by the judge's ruling, because we know the historical implications of this. We know the implicit bias that goes into how this young man's dreadlocks have been policed. And it reminds me of my own experience in high school. Not that I had braids, but I went to a private high school, and there was this whole issue around young men, particularly young Black men, who wanted to have cornrows. And the school for several years was very against it, and then finally relinquished and allowed it. But some of my friends and I, we think back and we reminisce on that. If we had lived during or it's not lived, if we were in high school during the time of the TikTok and Instagram era, where would our lives be in terms of protest demand based on that? But we simply didn't have that voice. So, I really hope that this young man continues the good fight. And, I know it's easier for me to say on this side in New York, but, maybe find a new high school, because this is ridiculous, right? I mean, it's clearly disrupting his educational journey.
Yeah, to be the face of this whole, lawsuit and this action, as I said earlier, the superintendent of school took out a whole page ad in a newspaper denouncing this young man and denouncing his hairstyle. I'm a civil rights lawyer, so you would think that the civil rights laws passed as part of the civil rights, bills that we saw in the 60s that prohibited discrimination on the basis of race would have covered hair. But quite frankly, it didn't. And people were still having to fight about hairstyles in the workplace, which is why we have Crown Acts. I mean, at some level, you think, well, why do we even need a Crown Act? Like, don't we already have laws that prohibit discrimination based on race? And the answer to that is yes. But we needed Crown Acts because Black people were still going into workplaces being discriminated against because of their hair. And these bills, the Crown Act is designed to protect Black people, particularly, or anyone that wears what we call protective or natural hairstyles. And the judge, one thing that really disturbed me, the judge ignored the state representative that was responsible for this bill, the Crown Act. He was asked the question, does this bill cover the length of hair? Because this whole fight now is over the length of his dreadlocks. So the school policy says can't be longer than your earlobe or your eyebrow. And the state rep who is responsible for the law says, yes, this law was intended. There's an inference in here to cover length, because we know with natural hairstyles, braids and locks, Black folks, we put synthetic hair in them. There's a certain length. You're wearing dreadlocks for them to get super long, not for them to stop at your eyebrows or your earlobes. So he says that was the intent, and that there's an inference in the law. So you have the lawmaker himself telling the court what the law says, and then the court still rejecting that, saying no, that my reading, the judge is saying his reading is more significant than the author of the bill. I think that's what's so galling to me. And there have been two other cases against this school district involving African-American students. I actually had the NAACP legal defense lawyer who's representing those two other students. Now, one of her students was able to get an injunction and go back to school, but they're still in litigation. These boys have since graduated from this school. But this school, I think, has this attitude that, unlike what you said, can't we just work this out and come to a compromise? I think they want to send a strong message that no. One of the things in that full-page ad was this notion that to be an American, a good American, we all have to learn to conform. And we know what conforming is, right? It's conforming to white Eurocentric values and dress and appearances, standards that have been set by, white folks, really. And it's so galling. I don't know, at your college, at schools that you've been, you talked about your, the high school you were in. Have you had any other experiences where either people have come to you, your students, or yourself have been in places where your hair has been called into question or your hairstyle?
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up my whole life, there have been different points where, my hair, whether it was it too short? Was it too long? Was it well kept? Was it braided? What type of braids did I have? Right, as you might see right now, I have a particular braid style that some folks might not like or think as a professional. Again, I think I'm very lucky that I'm in a profession as well as in an environment where I work where it hasn't come up in that kind of explicit way, but certainly there's always, and just growing up my whole life, there's always been questions about hair, and for me it's been what's on the top of my head, but also what's on my face. I remember years ago I would be at bars or different places, and I'd have particularly white men coming up and touching my face and saying, I like your beard, or telling me I look like James Harden, who's a professional basketball player. And anyone who knows what James Harden looks like knows that my light-skinned face does not look like James Harden. But there's this association that we think about, and it's something I've actually thought about a lot when it comes to the work that I do and work that I want to get into, but what I've been kind of calling like the sociology of petting, and this idea of how, there seems to be this non-consent, right? Or you don't need consent to touch Black people's hair, whether it's Black women, Black men. And I think that also now applies, or we can see how that applies to these Texas rulings, where Black folks' hair is always the exception. It's never seen as professional. It's never seen as good enough. Because even when Black folks do conform to white Eurocentric hairstyles, then it becomes, well, that's fake, or that's not their natural hair color, or why do they have a blonde wig on, or why are they doing it like this? So there's, the short answer is that it's never going to be right when it's on a black body. And I think that's the push that we need to urge is, right, how is this young man's or any folks' hairs actually harming them or harming others? What's the public safety issue? What's the issue here? Are we saying that white folks can't wear certain hair either? But we tend not to do that.
Yeah, his hair in particular, I've seen pictures of Mr. George too. His hair is so neat. It couldn't be a distraction in the classroom. It couldn't be a distraction to other students. But I'm thinking about, I was in St. Louis, my hometown recently, and a friend is looking for a job. And we were talking about braids. And I says, oh, why don't you get your hair braided? She said, I can't while I'm looking for this job. And this notion that we have to conform, to look a certain way, like if she shows up at a job interview in braids, that might be looked upon, she's not professional, right? It's not perfect. We heard Michelle Obama say she couldn't wear braids or didn't feel comfortable wearing braids in the White House. That would have been way too much, for the country. Armless, a brown suit, and now braids. I mean, they would have blown a gasket. So, but the fact that we have to still worry about that and think about that, like I'm going up for a position, or, I'm making a presentation, and how I'm going to be judged is tied into my hair, and specifically just our hair, because like these issues white women in particular don't have to wake up and wonder. As a Black woman, she said, touching our hair is an issue. If we wear it too short, that's an issue. If you wear it too long, literally people will say to Black women, Black women, you don't have hair that long. So white women get to have like super long hair down to their butt. But as a Black woman, there's a predefined length that you can wear your hair. Otherwise, it's fake, or as you said, it's not natural, it's not real. It's really, really interesting that in 2024, as advanced as we are as a country on so many levels, that we're still having this conversation, and people like my friend are worried about job interviews, or this young man can't go to school. It's really troubling. Good news is his family has vowed to fight. They will appeal. Maybe this gets turned around, but I think like you, I hope this young man who's been out of his school, away from his friends, separated from his school community, that he is allowed at least to somehow reunite and get the education that he so rightfully deserves. Stay with us. More on this story as we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
What's up, LA? This is John McKinney, your next district attorney. Voting is underway, and public safety is the top issue on the ballot. As a deputy district attorney for over 25 years, I know Los Angeles, and I know how to keep this community safe. And as an African American who lives and works in this community, I know the unique challenges we face. My promise to you is to ensure accountability, protect victims' rights, and give the underserved a voice. I'm John McKinney, and I ask for your vote for LA County District Attorney.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Go ahead, feel your engine. Admire that perfectly installed exhaust. Your vehicle's moving along this freeway like it was made from fresh installs and a whole lot of love. With eBay Motors, you get over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chucha opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chucha's Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and I want to give a big shout out to Dr. Nee Corte. He's, such an amazing friend, and he is the KBLA political affairs analyst and host of A More Perfect Union. He was on with me for over an hour in hour 1, and the most part of hour 2, and also to Dr. Calvin John Smiley, also one of my regular contributors who also did double duty tonight. Both of these really smart analysts, journalists, and extraordinary professors did double duty with me tonight, and I'm so grateful to both of them, and they'll be back lots of times. We'll continue that conversation we're having about this so-called contested convention that may happen in Chicago that's not going to happen. And I just want to circle back to one of the comments that Dr. Nee made, and I echoed, and it's this notion that somehow if Joe Biden were to step down, that there are all these other Democrats who are fit for office or who are more popular than the president, and in that case, the vice president. And again, so much of the news that people get is just flat out wrong. It's misinformation, and a lot of it's disinformation. It's designed to mislead people. So they've done polling around these so-called Democrats that would be better for the election than Joe Biden. These younger Democrats, since everyone's so obsessed with Joe Biden's age, and Dr. Nee says people believe he's frail, and facts do matter. So I don't know a frail person that can keep the schedule that Joe Biden keeps. He was in Los Angeles yesterday, fundraiser, restaurants, stopping, meeting, shaking hands, greeting people. He's up in San Francisco tonight. While at the same time, keeping his eye on all these geopolitical issues that are happening around the world. We had the best day ever. The stock market had the best day ever. So here's a guy who's supposed to be so frail, but yet he just keep, checking off these wins. Yet Donald Trump, with all of the issues we know about him, and again, I talked about this briefly yesterday, the stress of indictments and judgments against you to the tune of what Donald Trump is facing, that will kill you. Trust me, I'm a lawyer. I have lots of clients who've been in the position Donald Trump is in, and I've watched them. I've watched the kind of psychological toll it takes on them. So no matter what Donald Trump presents himself as, wants people to think about him, he is struggling emotionally, psychologically. He does not have $500 million sitting in a bank account. And even if he does, rich people are rich because they keep their money, not because they pay it out. So he's not anxious to pay out $500 million to the state of New York. And he is worried, as he should be, about those criminal charges, because even if he doesn't end up having to serve time like you or I would serve time, no one wants the stain of being twice impeached, being indicted, then potentially being convicted. So Donald Trump is not invincible. He's not a robot. He's a person. He puts his pants on just like the rest of us. So we've got to stop putting him on this pedestal and thinking that he is somehow immune to the same feelings that all of us have. But back to these polls and these younger candidates. They did a poll and they looked at how Gavin Newsom, the name that keeps coming up in these hypotheticals, how he would do against Donald Trump. And he fails miserably. Joe Biden and Donald Trump, depending on what day of the week it is, yesterday Joe Biden was up 4 points over Donald Trump. Some days he's down 2 points. So they go back and forth. Gavin Newsom's poll numbers against Donald Trump were like in the 30s. So this notion that somehow a younger candidate would somehow galvanize voters, again, it's just fantasy. It's fantasy, and it's immature, and it's irresponsible for smart Democratic strategists and analysts. They know that is a formula for failure. They know what happened in that contested election or that contested convention in 1968. They know it's not enough time to win a presidential campaign if you just start campaigning in August and the general election is in November. And then to this point about our vice president, anybody with any sense who's been following this for even the smallest amount of time knows that Kamala Harris does have a huge following in the Democratic Party. And even if Joe Biden were to release his delegates and they were free to vote for whomever, a majority of those delegates are likely to vote for Kamala Harris, not Gavin Newsom, not any of these other governors or senators. They're going to vote for the woman that has been out campaigning, that has control of the money, because the money can only be controlled by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I don't know in what world people think Kamala Harris, who has done as much as she has done, successfully as she has done it, would relinquish the resources that she's worked hard for, would disappoint the millions of voters who have worked by her side, me being one of them, who've supported her, who've been out in those streets with her, talking to voters and trying to enact policies that make the lives of American people better. Why would she do that to some uncontested candidate, a candidate who's not been tested at all? And like I said, there is no candidate whose poll numbers, Democratic candidate, who is polling above Biden and Harris against Donald Trump. So all of this is to say, we got to stop with these conspiracy theories. When people bring them to you, shut them down. Tell them to download the KBLA app. Tell them to tune in Monday through Fridays to Areva Martin in Real Time. Tell them to check out my podcast, Areva Martin in Real Time, because we're speaking truth here. We're giving you the facts. No chaser. the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's what's so important in this election year, is that people have a trusted source of information, someplace that they can turn to make sure that what they are hearing is the truth, and not these sound bites, and not these conspiracy theories that people are latching on to. If people think that something like that, like the replacement of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is going to happen in August, that may cause them not to work as hard for them between now and August. And we can't have that happen. We need to be working as hard as possible in every state across this country to make sure that Biden and Harris get reelected, and that they get to finish the job that they have started, that they get to finish working on behalf of the American people. And no, I am not sitting here suggesting that they are perfect, that they are, not without their flaws, that I am happy with every policy that they have implemented in their administration. That would be a lie. I'm not happy about a lot of things that are done by this administration, but as a mature voter, I'm smart enough and I'm mature enough to know that when you vote in elections, you're not voting because you agree with 100% of what your candidate that you're voting for believes in or has done. But you're voting for the candidate that embodies your principles, your values, and is going to work on your behalf. And I hope that everyone that watches this show, and the friends of people that watch this show and listen to this show, recognize that there's only one choice in this election, and that is Biden and Harris. We cannot send someone who is an adjudicated rapist, who has run, as Dr. Nee said, a criminal enterprise, who has a $500 million civil judgment against him and is facing criminal trials across this country. That cannot be who we want to represent us in this country and across the globe. Oh, it's been a good day. It's been a good news week. And I just thank all of you for tuning in. Just, keep tuning in, keep downloading the app, keep checking out my podcast, Areva Martin in Real Time. Check out all the shows on the KBLA app, because we are speaking truth to power right here on KBLA. So don't touch that dial. Robin Ayers is the next voice that you will hear, and the Raw Report coming up.